Rooster Creek Quilting in Holt Summit, Missouri is your one-stop shop for all your quilting needs and more. Their specialties include great customer rapport to assist you with finding that perfect fabric, notion, pattern, pre-cuts, and embroidery supplies. Rooster Creek also offers professional long-arm quilting services and classes and much more. Don't wait for the rooster to crow. Visit Rooster Creek Quilting at Holt Summit Plaza, Holt Summit, Missouri. It's a great place to go for all your quilting needs.
Today on Quilting Inside and Out, whether you get the scoop on the world of quilting, Louise Conway, Laura Bale, and Halley Bone. Welcome to JCTV Quilting Inside and Out, where you get the scoop on the world of quilting. Sponsored by Rooster Creek Company of Holt Summit, Missouri. I'm your host, Rick Jey. We are coming to you live, almost live, from the capital city of Jefferson City, Missouri. We have a great show today filled with 3 super guests, super quilters, and 1 state appraiser, who have some great information and techniques and experience to share with you. In the first half hour, we will talk with Miss Louise Conway and Miss Laura Bale, beg your pardon. And in the second half hour, has Miss Halley Bone. These 3 ladies each wish to share their quilting experience, their quilting world with you. And Halley Bone, as you may already know by the name, is a quilt appraiser, mentioned earlier. Halley will explain how that title came about and the information on how to classify that favorite quilt of yours that you might want to know more about. So please join me in a super show. Meeting first, welcoming Miss Louise Conway and Miss Laura Bale of Mexico, Missouri. It's great to have you both here as guests on Quilting Inside and Out.
Well, thank you.
Yes, great. Well, Louise, we'll start with you, if I may call you by your first name. Please tell us a little bit about you and those highlights of your life that best describe Louise Conway.
Well, I was born in Southwest Missouri, and I am an RN. I worked many hours as an RN, and I moved to northern Missouri approximately 20 years ago. And the first quilt I ever made was when I was 17, and then I didn't do too much quilting until I was later on after I moved up to North Missouri.
I see.
And needed a hobby, and I had always sewn all my life, and so it was just natural to transition into that.
Yes. Would you like to say a shout out to family at this time? Or?
Actually, I have very little family left to shout out. I have a daughter
I see.
and a son, but I will shout out to them, say hello, and some grandchildren, but
super. Well, great. Thank you for that. I know
they're wonderful.
Be interesting to see you here on Quilting Inside and Out. Well, Louise, can you share with us how you first was inspired to become a quilter?
Well, I think probably from my mother. She quilted a lot when I was younger, and like I said, the first quilt was made when I was 17. I had a year to wait until I could start going to college, and so I needed something to take up my time then.
I see.
And then I always sewed for myself and my children and a few other people, and then began quilting. It's just something I liked and grabbed a hold of, and it's a good hobby.
Right. Okay, and what continues to inspire and motivate you to continue your love of quilting? You're a club member, I understand.
I think of quilting, piecing is kind of like putting a puzzle together.
Oh, I see.
Pieces of a puzzle go together and you make a beautiful picture of something.
You're basically a piecer. We
Yes.
do have different aspects of putting a quilt together, where you're a piecer, an ironer, a quilter with a machine or hand ironing, or a tyer. As I grew up learning to tie for grandmother and mom.
Yes, I've done that.
Yes, that was my start. And then even then I could see that should we say, the artist aspect of putting together a quilt in color. And
I like the old-fashioned pattern types, the churn dashes and the pinwheels and things like that. And I never liked geometry, but quilting is almost all geometry.
I've never thought of it,
That's
but
something
that's
you
true.
need to learn in high school.
You have to
or
know
college.
your geometry, don't you? Your
Yes.
angles and whatever. You've got those tools to work with nowadays too,
Yes.
to help lay those out. Well, do you have any words of inspiration for a beginner or one who is currently at a lull and needs a little pickup?
Find you a good mentor that will help you along and help you learn the tricks of the trade, to make your seams a 1/4 inch and to cut accurately and things like that.
Well, yes, and that just kind of steps us right on into the next question. One of the best ways is to join a quilt club, a quilt guild, as they call them. I understand you are on the committee along with Laura for the Mexico, actually I shouldn't call it Mexico, Missouri, but it's the Prairie Pine Quilt Guild out of Mexico, Missouri. You know, that's just a few miles north of California. So, well, can you both give us the real scoop on the upcoming quilt show as it stands now? Now, that's not until next April, and we're going to have them back in March to talk about what to expect and look for at this upcoming quilt show. What can you tell us at this point? I guess it's really in the works.
We're planning on having probably 150 to 200 quilts at the show, and it'll be a 2-day show, run April the 5th and 6th, both 9 o'clock to 6. And
you'll have vendors, I guess?
Yes, we will have vendors. We will also have a Quilter's Treasures, which will be a sale of different items
super.
that people can pick up at a bargain. And
presentations, probably, demonstration.
We're working on that.
Working on that. So
We're
that's
going to have a
something
bed
look
turning.
forward. That's very interesting. You know that crazy guy named Jerry? Jerry, I think he sharpens, you know.
he'll be planning on being there.
I think he looks forward to it too, and I think he enjoys those quilt table turnings or bed turnings because
Yes.
they're so informational. So I look forward to that also.
The one that's being planned now for the bed turning is for signature quilts from different groups that have made quilts with their names on it.
Oh, I see. That's really popular with the family.
Especially a long time ago. It was very popular.
Yes. Sister did a show and talked about our family quilts, and one of them is with all these signatures, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, even the great-grandmother's name and on that side of the family. So I can understand, and I would look forward to that presentation also.
And the 4-H are cooking is doing the food venue.
Oh, and the 4-H again. It's right there at the 4-H Center
Yes.
in Mexico. So it's really a great show. I was honored to be a part of it about 2 years ago, I believe it was.
And Halley, who's coming next, will be there to appraise quilts.
Oh, excellent. Halley is going to be there to praise your quilts, too. So it sounds like a great plan. I know Halley surely looks forward to it also. Well, you surely have your favorite quilt. This may be one in front of us. Would you like to at least talk about your style or pattern?
This is the most intricate quilt that I made. took me many years to piece it all. It started out as the block of the month. However, I did not keep up with the block of the month, so it took me a few years to finish it. There's a total of 3,728 pieces in it.
Oh my!
And
it's beautiful. And the butterfly, which will take a camera shot of the quilt and have it as part of the overall show. So stay tuned for a great look at. We could raise it up a little bit. You can see the intricacy and the geometry that plays out. Now this is a star pattern. Is that a rotating star pattern?
No, this is actually a pattern of different flowers. It's a pattern that was from the late Pam Bono's patterns.
Yes, I see.
And it's called Out of Darkness. I like it. I liked it, and so I thought, well, that's a challenge, and I'll try it.
It's a beautiful quilt. Now, may I ask who did your quilting?
The quilting was done by Carolyn Bumphreys from Avaz, Missouri.
Avaz, Missouri. Oh, yes. Great. It's beautiful. You do great work. I'm really impressed by it. It's really awesome. Well, we are almost out of time, so I want to thank you for being my guest today on Quilting Inside and Out, Louise. You're sure welcome. I look forward to having you back with Laura. After the break, we talk with and speak with Laura Bale, who will share her life of quilting and what quilting means to her. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Rooster Creek Quilting in Holt Summit, Missouri is your one-stop shop for all your quilting needs and more. Their specialties include great customer rapport to assist you with finding that perfect fabric, notion, pattern, pre-cuts, and embroidery supplies. Rooster Creek also offers professional long-arm quilting services and classes and much more. Don't wait for the rooster to crow. Visit Rooster Creek Quilting at Holt Summit Plaza, Holt Summit, Missouri. It's a great place to go for all your quilting needs.
The Boys and Girls Club works to enable all youth, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, responsible, and caring adults.
Success is within the reach of every young person who enters our doors. We work with youth to ensure they achieve academic success, develop good character and citizenship, and have a healthy lifestyle.
Boys and Girls Club of the capital city. While some doors just open, our doors transform. Great futures start here.
Find us online at bgcjc.com and like us on Facebook. We're proud to be a United Way partner agency.
So my uncle calls and he says he's dizzy and he's losing his balance. I'm like, Unc, you want me to take you to a doctor? He's like, no, I'm gonna look up the symptoms. I said, your symptoms are you're dizzy and you're losing your balance. So he said, I can't get on the internet because my arm is numb. I said, well, use your good arm and dial 911. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love is showing symptoms of stroke, don't wait because it might be too late. Dial 911. Time lost is brain lost.
Welcome back, everyone, to Quilting Inside and Out. I'm your host, Rick Jey, as we now turn to Miss Laura Bale of Mexico, Missouri. Welcome. Great to have you here, Laura. Yes. Well, Laura, if I may call you by your first name, please tell us a little bit about you and the highlights of your life that best describe Laura Bale.
Retired, loving it.
Retired. That's a good one.
No, my grandmother started us out sewing when we were very little. And I had a grandmother that when my mother sewed or she hand quilted, after she left, then my grandma ripped it out. So,
I see.
And my mother loved to sew, but she did dresses. So she didn't do quilts or anything until after we vended quilt shows, or not quilt shows, craft shows for years.
Oh, I see.
And she had a stroke and came down with Parkinson's. Then we couldn't set up and tear down all the time. So
not if you could.
we had all this fabric, so what do you do with fabric? You go into the quilt. So, you know, Mom had to make an adjustments from 5/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, and no, I don't know if I can do this. I said, yeah, you can, Mom. But it was good therapy for my mom with the Parkinson's because she didn't shake when she was threading the fabric through. So we got to making quilts for the kids and
for family. Now, speaking of family, I guess you have family in Mexico, Missouri.
I do. Well,
would you like to give a shout out to your
Well,
family?
part of it's in Mexico, and my daughter's in North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yep.
I see. And your level of education, was you a housewife? Or?
I went to business school and worked for an insurance company and for a credit union.
I see. And you didn't share with us, Louise, what was your, was you just only a housewife?
No, I was an RN.
You did mention
nurse.
that. Beg your pardon. That is both honorable, my goodness, and now retired. Well, get back to quilting. well, then how was you first basically inspired to become a quilter? From mother?
From my grandmother, I think. My grandmother, you know, she had the old templates cut out of the cereal boxes and drew it on with pencil. That's never to come out again, but we've progressed a lot since then.
Yeah, I can remember the cereal box cutouts because I used to be able to cut those out for Mom. That was part of my job as a young man, a young boy. Oh, that's great. So it was more or less a grandmother and yourself. And so I do know that it is therapeutic using the hands. I had an uncle who's passed now, but had Parkinson. But I found on the video game, playing even with on the laptop and the mouse moving it around, he had total control of his fingers. So
that's right.
I can see where it would also come. And that's a good point to keep in mind if you're feeling like you're getting a little feeble, as we used to say back in the early days. Try quilting, cutting out, or assisting to quilt out. And maybe it would bring a new life to your everyday existence, shall I say. Well, what continues then you to inspire? And what motivates you to continue your love of quilting?
It's therapy for me. My husband has Alzheimer's, and that's why I have purple, because it's Alzheimer's month, and he's in a nursing home. So to sit and hand applique, I can do that while I'm with him, and I just like it. I like working. I like piecing.
Piecing,
and I like putting them together to see what I can come out with.
And applique, hand applique, which we'll talk about more so in the second, later on in your interview. Beautiful work here, and we'll get a camera shot of this quilt and one other. So we do want to talk about that in a moment. So what would you, therapy-wise, that definitely fills the time. What words of inspiration would you give a beginner and those that maybe be in a lull, or what would you like to share from your heart that means to you?
I'm like Louise. You need to find a good mentor, and a lot of times you can go to a quilt shop and they can help you and take classes.
Yes.
Quilt guilds are a fabulous place to go, or if you just know somebody they'll take you under their wings and teach you. Because if we don't pass this down, it's going to be another lost art.
Yes.
And I think more and more people are picking it up and doing it. And just to sew squares, my daughter makes baby quilts for her employees. And so I never thought of me teaching anybody to do anything, but now I see it in her work.
Yes,
so,
that's really...
and that's how I started a lot too, was making baby quilts and tying them like you.
I can identify with that. Mom and sisters all have to make those baby quilts.
That's right.
I do paintings in the same sense. So everyone generally ends up with a painting of mine, so I hand it down however I can. Well, earlier you joined Louise talking about the information on the prairie Pine Quilt Guild show coming up in April. Can you tell us any more about the Prairie Pine Quilt Guild? The meeting dates, as far as your guild, the meeting dates, do you invite new members? When do you meet? Contributions, special events that you feature?
We have lots. We have a retreat coming up this weekend in Brunswick, Missouri.
Brunswick, I see.
We meet the first Monday of every month except for Labor Day weekend.
I see.
Right.
Yeah, because of the holiday.
In January, we don't meet in
And
January
where do you
because of
meet,
the weather.
there in
At
Mexico?
the Presbyterian Church, and the meetings start at 7, and they usually run till about 9 o'clock. And we have special speakers that come in and
Show and tell.
Show and
Show and
tell.
tell,
And
It sounds like a fun time.
there's fabulous quilters
And I
there.
haven't gone to a Quilt Guild meeting or a quilt show where I didn't have a lot of fun.
They're good people.
Just meeting, yes, they're really good people. And they're handing down a craft. They keep it flowing. It's nationwide, worldwide. We've got quilting worldwide that from the show here, we're getting a lot of views from all parts of the world. So back to Mexico, Missouri. It sounds like you have a lot of happening. Do you have a website that you could share with us, or a contact information if someone wants to talk?
There is a Facebook account.
On Facebook, and it's Prairie Pine Quilt Guild in Mexico, Missouri, and on Facebook, and you can open it up and like it or whatever.
And you see any postings coming up to remind them of
the meetings
and what
and
happened.
if you don't get to attend, they take pictures of the show and tell, or
excellent.
if they have a speaker, they take her and do her presentation so that you can see it.
So if you can't get out of the house, shall we say, or your condition, shall we say, physically doesn't allow that, then you can tune into the Facebook there at Prairie Pine and enjoy it.
Our
So
dues
I
are-
invite you to tune into Facebook and take a look at it. Yes, Lou?
Our dues are minimal. It's $25 a year to join the
that
Quilt
is
Guild,
increase.
so and you can have a lot of fun at $25.
And you draw from different communities around
Yes.
Mexico. I talk to people from New Brunswick and clear up to Hannibal who are even familiar with Mexico, Prairie Pine.
Been around for quite a few years.
How many years would you estimate?
We had our, about 35?
I think around
Good
35
track
years.
record. Well, I know you all do a great job. I love your quilt show. I look forward to the next one. Every quilt show, from an artistic or artist standpoint, the colors, the layout, the design, the perspective, the detail, that's where I finally, hey, this is artwork. So I started inviting quilters, as you know, to the program, Mid-Missouri Art News. And then I was approached, well, Rick, why don't you put together a show for us quilters? We're all over the United States. So
We have a lot
Paducah.
of very talented quilters
Yes, you
in our
do.
group. We have one that has been an instructor. She's all over the United States.
And who's that, may I- if you can-
Linda Carlson.
Yes, Linda Carlson. I recall that name. Yes,
And,
she's very talented. So,
About any type of quilting there is, we see it on our show and tell.
oh, that's super. So that's important that you do tune in to the Facebook and see all these different types of quilts. If you love quilting like I love quilting, you're going to enjoy it. And I hope here at Quilting Inside Out we have inspired you also. Well, let's see. It's my understanding, not to get carried away on something else, but it's my understanding you are an accomplished hand and needle expert in the field of applique, which we see in front of us. So if you can, please give us a little presentation on your work as doing applique. And you partially completed some blocks here and a couple of quilts. So let's go ahead and see if we can bring these up to the camera somewhat and get them in. Oh, that's a nice shot. And you can
What I like about this is it started out as a Jack Dempsey embroidery block.
Oh, just a Jack Dempsey block, and you added to it.
Instead of an embroidery in it, I added to it and appliqued the whole thing instead of just cross-stitching or whatever.
We'll have a shot of this by camera. So you can see this three-dimensional.
And then I put beadwork on it and, ruching.
And this is just an example of what you will see at the quilt show. Now you have another piece. Oh, this one is, they're both just beautiful. I guess these have been appraised also by Miss Bone. Okay, we have basket work here. And this corner piece, you can see again the work bringing out the piece. Now, did this start out as a pattern, or did you?
These were blocks again that I embroidered and appliqued. And I was wintering in North Carolina, and I went to a quilt shop and picked up a quilt magazine, and this block was in there. And I said, I got to have it to go with my butterflies, because this reminded me of butterflies with my flowers.
And there's a butterfly I noticed in your first piece that you presented. So butterflies are popular. Here's one trying to fly away up here. Well, super. That's awesome, fantastic work. I just, not only the machine work and sewing and your blocks, but also when you get into the applique and more detail that you put into it. Just
this
shows
also has yo-yos in it, which is something that...
the yo-yo.
Yes. That's another type of making quilts.
Oh, I see. So there's a lot more here than meets the eye, like inside and outside the quilt. This is definitely outside. Now, we haven't peeked under the inside, but that's beautiful too.
Yeah, the quilting is gorgeous.
Quilting, always have to have your backing. Well, not a backing in the sense of...
Carol Weiss from Mexico, Missouri quilted this one, and Jan Forsey from Centralia quilted this one.
That's beautiful too. Oh, great. Okay, well, we're about out of time. So I want to thank you for being my guest today on Quilting Inside and Out. And look forward to seeing you again in March and at the quilt show in April. So thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
And being a guest. Okay. Well, next we will be turning to quilt appraiser Miss Halley Bone. And so we ask you to stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
Rooster Creek Quilting in Holt Summit, Missouri is your one-stop shop for all your quilting needs and more. Their specialties include great customer rapport to assist you with finding that perfect fabric, notion, pattern, pre-cuts, and embroidery supplies. Rooster Creek also offers professional long-arm quilting services and classes and much more. Don't wait for the rooster to crow. Visit Rooster Creek Quilting at Holt Summit Plaza, Holt Summit, Missouri. It's a great place to go for all your quilting needs.
So here are the keys. Congratulations, it's officially yours. I'm sure you'll have many happy years here. Except for you, because you'll be gone 3 years from now, struck down by the same disease that got your father. So you won't be around for them. And sadly, it could have been detected early with a simple test, but you didn't have it. Okay, who wants to check out the backyard?
For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov.
The Boys and Girls Club works to enable all youth, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, responsible, and caring adults.
Success is within the reach of every young person who enters our doors. We work with youth to ensure they achieve academic success, develop good character and citizenship, and have a healthy lifestyle.
Boys and Girls Club of the capital city. While some doors just open, our doors transform. Great futures start here.
Find us online at bgcjc.com and like us on Facebook. We're proud to be a United Way partner agency.
Welcome back. Please join me now for the final moments of Quilting Inside and Out, where I introduce you to Miss Halley Bone, a certified quilt appraiser for the state of Missouri. And as I turn to Halley, I have to thank you for coming and joining us as a guest here on Quilting Inside and Out.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, please tell us everything you can about Halley Bone.
Well, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. I didn't know it, but my great-grandmother made quilts. But my grandmother insisted that every time I was visiting, I would have something in my hand, whether it was knitting or embroidery or some kind of handwork. And she'd say, everybody else can watch television, but we're going to do this. And then we will watch Gunsmoke, which was on way, way back.
9 o'clock.
Yeah. And I was a school teacher at first. I went to the University of Kansas, and which I know is not popular in Missouri, too popular. And started quilting the year that I graduated, which was 1967. And was a school teacher for 13 years. And then I retired, worked in my husband's office. And quilting just never left my side after I first started. So that became a big part of my life. I have even written a couple of quilting books. But the quilting really takes up a good part of my time every day.
Now, what school district? If someone's looking in, might recall.
Okay, I taught at Wyandotte High School in Kansas City, Kansas. Yes. Mm-hmm. I taught at Normandy High School in St. Louis, which is not as good as it was in those days. Yeah. I taught up in Rochester, Minnesota, in their school district, and last but not least, I taught in Knob Noster, Missouri, because my husband was in the Air Force.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm. At Whiteman. So I sort of was around the Midwest for my teaching career.
Oh, super. Well, I know you're inspiring, not only as a quilt gilter, that's a new one, appraiser, but also as an individual. I'm just meeting you in the recent months and asking you to be a guest and meeting you at the quilt shows. It's been a pleasure. So thankful for you being here. Well, I guess stepping away from the praising, are you a quilter?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And well, what inspired you then to be?
Well, I'll tell you, I came home from school teaching one day. I had a quilt at a quilter's when I taught in Minnesota. That quilt took me 7 years to make, because when you're a school teacher, you don't have a lot of time. So I came home, and there were 4 ladies on my doorstep, and they had put the binding, they had finished the quilting, but they didn't like the binding that I had chosen. So they put different colors of binding on all 4 corners and said, let's put this on your bed and see what really looks good. And I was so impressed with that meticulous treatment of someone else's quilt that I thought, I want to be a part of these ladies and what they're doing, and I want to see more. I want to hang out with them. And so I kept making quilts. I got everything I knew out of books. My mother had told me that I would never learn to sew because I am a little bit klutzy. And she did not think that I would be able to do it. So I did start. I got books at the library where I taught and just put things together. When I started in '67, that's 52 years ago, there were almost no books. There was no quilt guild, like you're talking about the Prairie Pines Guild up in Mexico. There were no guilds. There was nothing that I could draw on. And so I had to get a few books, and then the next thing that happened to me was I took a class at the St. Louis Art Museum, and I met the curator of the American Folk Art Museum in New York.
Oh, I see.
And he invited me to come and study with him. Wow. So, one thing led to another. I started teaching quilting classes. I started writing for many of the magazines, the quilting magazines. All the time making quilts. I'm making 2 right now for Christmas for a friend and his daughter. But anyway, always quilting was when I got home from teaching, when I get home this evening, I will work on a quilt. And I started also repairing old quilts. I went to a quilt shop one day and the owner handed me this quilt that was literally in tatters and said, "You can fix this." And I was like, "Okay, if you think so." And I did.
Well, in the words of Madeline Gieselman from the Missouri State Quilt Guild, she claims that she is hooked on quilting.
I am
you are too.
Oh yeah.
It's easy to become hooked into the world of quilting, believe me. I guess that's why I enjoy doing the program so much and having guests like Halley on the program. Well, you spoke of, I want to basically talk about your book writing, because you have published a book on how to care for, what have you, your quilts, and you have a new edition you're working on, and we want to have you back about in March of 2019 to again talk about the completion of that and when it might be available. So if you want to tell us a little bit of a promo, a teaser on what to look for in your new book.
Sure. Well, when I taught quilting, and I was repairing lots of quilts, and the Kansas City Star in Kansas City found out that I was repairing quilts. And they asked around, and one day I was at Quilt Market in Houston, and the publisher came up to me and said, "Would you write a book about what you teach and how you repair all these quilts?" And I had also worked for the Smithsonian, hanging their quilt shows all around the country, and I'd gotten loads of information about quilt care. And all of us who make quilts want them cared for and to pass down to future generations, so as heirlooms. And so he said, "I want you to write a book about this." And I said, "Oh my goodness." So they published it for 9 years. And then they sold the rights to another publisher out in Seattle, C&T Publications. And so they called, I don't own the rights really to publish it myself, so they called me and they said, recently, a couple of months ago, and said, "Would you rewrite it? And we'll take all new pictures." And so it's going to come out, I think it will be a year. I think they're being optimistic to say this summer, but it might be out this summer. I don't know.
And if you'll let me know, I will definitely let everyone know, even before March. If you can give us an update, we'll keep everyone updated on that. Well, we're getting close to take a break. Did you have any final words before the break?
I would encourage anybody who wants a wonderful, I wouldn't call it a hobby, it's a way of life for me, to get involved in quilting. Join a quilt guild, subscribe to some of the magazines, join with what I call your tribe, which in my case is quilters.
Yes, excellent. Well, we will take a break and then come back and talk about specifically quilt appraising, and even a little bit of care maybe for your quilts.
Sure.
We have a couple here before us that have a lot of history, so stay with us. We'll be right back for more from Miss Halley Bone.
Rooster Creek Quilting in Holt Summit, Missouri is your one-stop shop for all your quilting needs and more. Their specialties include great customer rapport to assist you with finding that perfect fabric, notion, pattern, pre-cuts, and embroidery supplies. Rooster Creek also offers professional long-arm quilting services and classes and much more. Don't wait for the rooster to crow. Visit Rooster Creek Quilting at Holt Summit Plaza, Holt Summit, Missouri. It's a great place to go for all your quilting needs.
Please join me once again with state certified quilt appraiser, Miss Halley Bone, who has the scoop on what it takes to be a statewide, United States-wide certified quilt appraiser. So, Halley, welcome back to the segment. Please tell us everything you can, what you'd like to share about the qualifying basis, that you basically make qualifications to become a quilt appraiser for the United States, state of Missouri, what have you. Go ahead.
I actually have even appraised over in London. London to, I guess, California is the where I've been. How do you do it? All right, well, you have to, as we put it in the appraiser world, flapped a lot of quilts. And what that means is that you have to have seen a lot of quilts, examined a lot of quilts, made a lot of quilts, and studied. There are many, many books on fabric dating, how to see what designs were popular in what era of the actual quilting, not just the patterns. And you just study and study. You then go to Paducah, Kentucky. Yes. The American Quilter Society is the one that certifies a person. And it takes, well, I would say a good 3 years once you check in with Paducah, because you have to take classes, and these are like 8-hour, 9-hour classes. Yes. And after you take the classes, then there are 2 very, very stressful, long tests. The one is verbal, and they just present you with 5 quilts that you've never seen, and you have to go through about 24 points about each one of these quilts, not looking at any papers or books or anything like that. Wow. Give a date, give a value.
I see.
Some people are better able because they've studied more than others. Some don't pass. Some take the test 3-4 times. Then the written test is very hard too. And I'll just give a little anecdote. There was a girl in my test room, and when we left, they had presented us with a quilt. And they said, you know, date it, tell a little bit about it. And she said, oh, on my test I wrote that it was made out of polyester. And I said, uh-oh, it had moth holes in it. I think it was wool. Whoa. Needless to say, she flunked. And it's after years of study. You know, you can always take the test again, but it's very expensive, and it takes a lot of time. But to me, it's been very, very, very worth it.
Oh, and I have so many that know the name Halley Bone, and your expertise and credibility. So you come to me and JCTV, Quilting Inside and Out, with so much that we can put forth to the viewers that that they can learn from and get information. Now, it has to entail a lot of scheduled travel involved.
I've been gone for 17 weeks this past couple months, and but if my mother used to always say, if someone asks you to do something, don't say no. So I try not to say no. I do have to say no occasionally, but a lot of my clients have become best friends. The 2 ladies that were here before
Louise and Laura,
both are dear friends of mine. And there are just many of these people that I don't see other than they bring me a quilt, they end up staying and we talk, or we go out to lunch or something, and I keep up with them and their families. And so I guess it's not just about the quilt for me, it's also about the people who make the quilts. And when a person makes a quilt, they sort of put their soul into that quilt.
Yes.
They have to choose the fabric, choose the pattern, choose everything, and themselves, a person's self is reflected in the quilt that they make.
And that's where I tie that in again to an artist. As an artist, I pick the colors. I have it in my head what I want to paint finally. And then I put so much into it. Time, thought, heart, emotionalism, because every painting, every quilt does have, shall we say, some kind of
symbolism.
Symbolism, yes.
Yeah.
And means maybe one person looks at it differently than the other, and it may symbolize something in their life or another person's life, totally different, but still, again, through quilt art, I've always said that quilting is an art.
Yes.
One of those that we've almost forgot about, but now we're back into these beautiful pieces, art pieces. Now, talking about art pieces, your travels, thank you for coming out between snowstorms, and I'll give you safe, please, on the way home. Any information you'd like to share with our viewers that would be beneficial, who's thinking about having his or her quilt appraised? You have samples there. And the quilts that we saw earlier with Louise and Laura in the first part, those are valued. I think she said one was $12,000. So your quilt may have value that you didn't even realize. And so give us an idea how you take a quilt to appraise it.
There are several reasons why I recommend people getting quilts appraised. One is if you're going to display it in a quilt show against damage, because things can happen. A ceiling can water, whatever. Or theft. If you're going to mail it for a wedding gift or something, that's a good idea. But also, if the quilt is in your home and you want it to be passed down in very good condition, things can happen. Insects, mice, theft, water damage, mildew. So if you have it appraised, then you can take that to your insurer and say, this is what happened, it's now ruined, and they will reimburse you for,
That's the bottom line, basically.
Yes.
I understand.
Yes.
Just not for the idea of seeing how much maybe your quilt is worth in a sense of self-satisfaction or what have you. Less humble of reasons, maybe, but also, yes, for
well, if you're going to give it
purposes.
as a gift, for example, you don't want it used as the dog bed or the. I have one client whose son-in-law put a quilt in the bed of his pickup truck and it got ruined. So if she had told this young man, this thing is worth so much, because what we're finding is the cost of fabric is going up. And when I started, solid white fabrics like this were 9 cents a yard, 6 cents a yard, and then they've risen to the printed fabrics now are about $12 to $15 a yard. So and they continue to go up. And so you want to make sure that the recipient of a quilt that you've made is going to respect it and enjoy it for what it is, and then pass it down.
So basically, a quilt that you had appraised 5 years ago might need a reappraisal.
Increase in value. Now everybody doesn't do this, but my clients are my friends. I do the reappraisals for free because I want them to be current for their insurance.
Super.
And I do know that the insurances honor the appraised values, because one of my clients had her motorhome burn and they would not honor her appraised value of her diamond ring because they said, well, how do we know you took it off? But the quilt, they did honor that
But the Halley Bone appraisal.
Well, it wasn't because of me, but it would have been any appraiser. But I mean, really, it was kind of I felt good about that,
Now let's talk about.
All right, let's look at
1920.
This is 1920s. This probably did not cost this person more than about $1.75 to make. All of these little leaves and this pretty quilt were scraps from clothing manufacturing and household sewing projects. Our Midwestern ancestors were very frugal. They wasted nothing. And so they didn't throw away any of the little fabrics. And so she's made a gorgeous quilt. And then she took this design and even quilted it into the quilt. There's a lot of quilting on this quilt, and it's gorgeous. So this is one of mine, but I did have it appraised, and it appraised at about $5,000. So that's that.
Now, excellent. That gives us some idea, just the age and the quality And the keep, you've taken very good care
Well,
of that.
And this is one that I made. It's called Lucky Stars, and the artist, the designer is Terry Atkinson. What I love about this quilt is that none of the star points have to match. So I could do one of these quicker than I can when I'm trying to match all these points.
I see.
Why this one appraised high was because I used what they call an innovative use of color, and I used purple with green. And about 10 years ago, that wasn't being done. Now it is.
Oh my,
but
yes.
I went to California, bought these batik fabrics, and fell in love with them and made this quilt.
This
and
California, the state. Now,
California, yeah.
I only live 18 miles south of California, Missouri, so to be clear, I don't think California, Missouri has some of the fabrics that you could pick up in California.
But this one, yeah, and I do.
What would the price will be on this one?
I had this appraised. They appraised it at $7,000 because
Beautiful.
of the unusual, the rarity, the unusual use of color, the workmanship. I think that's a little high, but I didn't appraise it, so you know, I had somebody in Paducah appraise it.
And the quilting itself,
the quilting.
Now
this quilting, the quilting in the first quilt I showed was hand quilted, and this one was done by machine by a lady in St. Louis called, her name is Terry Kanyuk, and she lives in Labadee, actually Wildwood. I'm sorry, and she did a really interesting job on this, and it's with swirls, and she counteracted the geometric design by putting in many curves in her quilting design, and I think, you know, these sort of rambling things, and I think it really complements this particular
And even your
quilt.
binding is really done nice and tight.
Thanks.
I'm taking a close look at the binding.
That's one thing we look at is whether or not the binding is full all the way around.
Do you want to flip it? Or even the back side.
The back is interesting. I pieced. I ran out of the backing fabric, so I pieced some of the leftovers from the front, and I didn't intend this. I have had it in shows, but I didn't intend to do anything with it other than just for myself. Now this one is again a number of batiks, and again I was out in California and I saw this pattern is called bento box. It's kind of a Japanese bento boxes are what they put lunches in. They're wooden. And this designer designed this and said, well, let's call this bento box. So it's got a lot of variety of fabrics. And I had fallen in love, I love blue. And so I fell in love with some of these blues and had to buy them and make them into this.
Excellent. And what was this one appraised at?
This one only appraised at $3,000. And the reason why...
Okay.
It's very simple. It's nothing but rectangles and squares. So it was much easier to piece and easier to quilt.
The small blocks of the 1930s, 40s, similar to the little blocks, intricate work, yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's a beautiful quilt too.
Well, it was fun to do that one because it went very fast. And I teach that one at several of the quilt shops, local quilt shops.
Okay. Well, as we're getting close on time, how does a viewer now find you? Where will you be appraising at in the future?
Ooh. Well, I don't have my calendar, but pretty much I'm busy like every week.
Do you have a website where they can?
I do not have a website. I have Facebook? No, I don't go on Facebook. They don't like us to be on Facebook.
Oh, I see.
For the reason that no one knows where the information goes over the ether, you know, out, and you know they can Google me, and I think my phone number is in there under the AQS, American Quilter Society, list of quilters.
Yes, definitely.
So that's, and I'm so busy that I've never needed a website or you know, Facebook.
You don't have time for it.
I really don't. I really don't.
Well, Halley, this has been very informative. I'm sure our viewers will be looking more into having their quilts appraised. So, on behalf of Quilting Inside and Out, Rooster Creek Company, our sponsor, and me, Rick Jey, I want to thank you for being my guest today and for your very informative content.
Thank you.
Great. Well, now the scoop. Not so much is happening during the winter months, but we do look forward naturally to that Prairie Pine Quilt Guild show coming up April 5th and 6th in Mexico, Missouri at the 4-H facility there. If you have any scoop you'd like us to talk about and get the information out here on the show, please contact me. That's 573-645-07. Give us the scoop on what's going on in your quilt guild or your quilting world. Or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please get a hold of me. We are dedicated in the effort to get the scoop out to our viewers here on Quilting Inside and Out. Again, I want to thank JCTV producer Gloria Enlow and her crew, and the JCTV Access staff. And I want to thank you, naturally, for, as our viewers, for joining us here on Quilting Inside and Out, where you actually do get the scoop on the world of quilting. It's all right here, JCTV, and don't forget YouTube. I'm Rick Jey saying, see you next time.